And we're back with me, Johnny McMurray, on the On the Spot Football Podcast for yet another fantastic guest. A prolific goal scorer. He's played in the Irish League for a long, long time. At the Glens, you'll probably know him best for his time at Linfield. He's also the elite director for kids coaching development for the IFA. And he's here on the podcast, Mr. Andrew Waterworth. Andrew, how are you?
I'm well, thanks, Johnny.
You probably bossed up your elite player development thing there, but it's in there around that.
Dermot O'Carroll always tells me, he always says that my title is pink and fluffy.
Right, okay.
And he never, so Dermot O'Carroll gives me a lot of stick about that title. But Director of Elite Player Development, and the concept basically comes from our role is to try and develop players. So it's the first path to hopefully being an elite player, being a professional footballer, and then subsequently an international footballer. So that's probably the best way to describe it. But just to try and
close.
You were close, but I do get a lot of stick about that.
Should have taken another few seconds probably just to read that.
Just the pink and fluffy name.
Dive right.
It gave me a good chance to introduce myself and
did pop on it actually for once, probably more so than me trying to do it and up. But listen, it's so happy to have you on. I know I've probably tortured you over the last couple of months trying to get you on back and forward, but you're a very busy man. You're in the country, you're not in the country, your job's pulling you from pillar to post from the conversations that we have. So no better place to start than the kind of touch on kind of what you're doing at the minute and where you're at with work, what do I say?
Yeah, my work, for once, work-life balance is good. My job, as we've just discussed, I feel very privileged. You know, I get to work with our next, hopefully, generation of international players. My work sees me, one day I'm on the pitch, the next day I'm visiting players who've been in our national academy and are now playing for academies or professional teams in England. I get to coach, youth international teams. I get to sit with a team, a senior leadership team that sets the strategy for elite youth player development. So I definitely feel it's a diverse role. I definitely feel very privileged, and being able to do this role every day. I think with football, it's a passion of mine, and it's always been a passion. I've always been obsessed with the game, obsessed with coaching. Sometimes it's good because people say if you do something you love, you'll never work a day in your life. Mm-hmm. However, there is a caveat where when you get so emotionally involved in your job, you can never really switch off.
Yeah.
And I think you have my message. It sort of would say that I'm never really switched off. And look, I do love it. I love talking football. Like, my friends will keep me going about leaving the ball behind because I'm always wanting to talk about the game. But I do, on that as well, have a nice work-life balance now where I'm not playing. I'm attempting a little bit of golf, which I've found out that I'm not too good at. I have two beautiful kids that occupy a lot of my time. And a missus that now is demanding a little bit more of my time because she's been very patient over the years where I've been playing, and now I just feel I'm in a good place. I'm enjoying work, and look, hopefully it continues. But I do realise that everyone has a shelf life.
Well, it's one of the things that I've spoke to you about numerous times. I love the idea of being able to transition from football and still being in football, and I think the conversations that we had just before here was we aren't at a full-time capacity like most other countries, and the likes of the coaches, the elite coaches that we have who are all probably not even in work at the minute, and they have no real place to go to coach full-time, and they're obviously having their jobs and stuff. So it's one of the things that I have a serious interest in, and I think we're going to dive into it probably in a later stage just throughout the podcast. But it's incredible to see the work that you've done since you've left football, having that incredible career that we're going to dive into. But you've went straight into the IFA, you've been a coach educator, and now you're coaching the elite kids to try and develop the first team, which is something to be admired of, if I'm being completely honest.
Look, it's very kind. It's a good point, Johnny, to be honest, because I always felt that I would struggle the minute I finished playing. I had to retire, had to finish playing due to health issues, which I'm sure we'll discuss later. But at the time, I left full-time football in Scotland, and it was something I regretted. I carried with me my whole life. It's something that for a long time I couldn't really get over. But I have to thank my family, particularly my mum and dad, who are no longer with me, that always spoke to me about education, having an afterlife from football. And the minute I left Scotland, which I was on a pathway to which I felt professional football, I knew within my gut that I would never return. But I knew at that feeling I wanted to work in football forever. So I made sure then I went back and I wanted to proceed in the education. So I had 2 A-levels, so I had to go back and do like a foundation degree. I ended up doing an undergrad and then a master's degree. And it was tough times, and maybe that's why I'm so bad at golf, because when my friends were out playing golf, I was in the book.
Working on that handicap, you were
head around the books, and I really found that I enjoyed the education, and I always felt that I wanted to prepare myself for a role in football. A lot of volunteer hours. I mean, I got into the Irish FA. It took me like 5 attempts to get into the Irish FA. I worked across a diverse range of departments, from community relations to grassroots development to club development, and then eventually found out a little bit of a niche in coach education. And again, I was a little bit of a geek when it came to coaching. I loved everything about it. I had a good, team around me that, let me grow and threw me into situations that, I felt I grew from. And then Jimmy Chilton, who started the elite play, the National Academy Club NI as it was then, volunteer hours, and anybody who's worked under Jim develops a real thick skin. So he gave me an opportunity, him and Jared Little. And again, I found then I really, really enjoyed it. And even though Jim used to always say that he was going to put a halt to my meteoric rise, it was something then when the opportunity came up to go and lead the programme strategically, I felt I was ready. And that transition then naturally happened for me, where when I did retire, and you missed the change room, you missed the playing every day. I mean, I had Kirk Miller, Jordan Stewart, Jimmy every day of my life for like 10 years, and I loved it. And then going from that to that was like tough.
Yeah.
But because I had my job that was in football, I got to be exposed to the changing room and still the conversations around football. So I think I was quite lucky in that aspect. But I can understand anybody who's leaving the game, how difficult it is, because there's a connection there. You belong in the changing room, you belong in a team. And then the one day not have that is difficult, and I would imagine for anybody who's going to no football whatsoever, it would be very difficult.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. I think we spoke about it multiple times on this podcast, that the changing room's like a very specific place where there's no limits to people's behaviour or jokes or whatever, and it's a whole different way of life, but it's like a brotherhood in a natural sense. It's like you're stuck there and you spend more time, especially you probably being full time towards the end. You see them more times than you see your family. Do you know what I mean? And especially if you're going from that, and you're volunteering, you're doing different things.
You're emotionally connected, because you have the highs and the lows, the wins, you're celebrating together, or you're going through tough times together. So yeah, as you say, it's like a brotherhood, and just real good memories that no one can ever take away from you. So I'll go back there where I feel a lot of gratitude for the career that I had, and the friends that I found in football, and the experiences that I had. So certainly gratitude. And I think I'm a little bit older than you, Johnny, so I think we do get them.
You don't look at now before, but just slightly.
I feel it now with the 2 young kids, but you certainly look back with a little bit more, of gratitude and of what I've had.
Take me back to how it all began. So how did Andy Waterworth get introduced to football? What influences did you have in football at the time to kind of keep you in that sort of routine of I want to be a footballer, and how did that start?
I grew up, my brother, football mad. If anybody knows, my family, my mother's side are McCarthy's from Crossgar. Kilmarnock was their club. And a lot of cousins and friends who were my age. We were just football daft. We had a local community club, Kilmarnock, Crossgar, on our doorstep, and we just played every day at Kilmore's pitch. And for me, that was Kilmarnock was like the biggest club in the world. That's who I wanted to play for. Was my team. I'm just very lucky that with a family who were so close to football, that it just became natural. And there's a Crossgar Youth League It's quite famous in County Down, that still runs. That I think David Healy can through the Cross Garda Youth League too. That anybody who's anybody in that area just plays. And then from that, Kilmore and Cross Garda, a good little connection where once you were decent or half decent in that Cross Garda Youth League, even though to play for Kilmore, was Cross Garda then in Downpatrick Youth League, and just progressed from there. Left Cross Garda, then went and played for Hillsborough Boys in the Lisburn League. The Lisburn League at the time was the big league.
That was the main.
Yeah.
It always sort of is at that sort of 16s age group. It becomes the main league with the bigger
St Andrews, Lisburn Youth. We were Hillsborough Boys, and your Glentoran and Linfields come into it. That Portadown. So, but like, as I say, I was very fortunate that big footballing family. Mum and dad never really gave me any pressure. I was a very shy country kid. Even the time I went to the Lisburn League, I always felt I wasn't good enough. I had imposter syndrome. Wasn't very shy. But one thing I'll say is football gave me a lot of confidence, and for that's why I think it's important that people play sport from such a young age. I can remember like a specific moment, like you find your why. I remember being in the car of my old principal in my primary school. Harry Murray was the principal, and I remember going down to probably illegally, 7 was bunged in the back of his car to play Calency Primary School, and I was a P6 playing on a P7 team, and I scored a header. And I remember him driving back to the primary school, looking in the rear view mirror, saying that was the best bloody goal I've ever seen. I remember the feeling that I had from that moment, from an adult, giving me that amount of confidence and praise. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I want to do this forever. I want to be that person who scores the goal and get that feeling forever. And that was just that little specific moment for me that made me want to remain in the game. And like I said, Kilmore was always my team, and I always felt no matter where I went, I always wanted itching to get back to play for Kilmore, and how did they do on a Saturday? And I was a very shy lad, and eventually I found my way to Glentoran youth team. Realised then maybe I wasn't going to play first team football. Roy Coyle was the manager, and they were winning leagues and signing big players, and I was playing for the reserves, and I was just again one of those kids just wanted to play. I was just didn't want to wear the tracksuit. I wanted to go and play. Went to Ards, struggled at Ards, relegation. Went to the Whites, Paul Kirk signed me. Started off with the Whites, where struggled, imposter syndrome, didn't really back myself. Couldn't trap a bag of cement. And then I think Paul Kirk seen something in me with more of my personality. I think he seen that I was industrious, enthusiastic and honest, and I really connected with Paul Kirk, and I think that was like I felt was a real strong value for me. Like my mum and dad, one thing I'll give them is they always taught me to be a good person first, and that was the most important. And I can genuinely, that's how I connected with Paul Kirk. I remember him telling me that, like, even though he said it more diplomatically, but I was struggling on the pitch, but he liked my personality. And it was one changing moment for me. I was on the bench against Glentoran, and a player got injured in the warm-up, and he says, "You're starting." I ended up scoring 2, and we beat the Glens 3-1 at Ballyskay, and honestly never looked back. Just gave me so much confidence, give me sort of value, give me a reason, and it probably gave me a little bit of credibility. Distillery to Hamilton back to the Glens, Glens to the Blues, where I probably found my home. And I ended up at Glenavon, which was tough for me because it's such a great club, and I never really got to do it justice. I had a lot of things battled on. My mother was ill, and I ended up, where I had my own health issues, and I had a call time on that really quickly. So I think the only regret is that I didn't pursue my career in professional football, but outside of Northern Ireland. But when I've did serious reflecting, maybe it was meant to be. My mother ended up ill, very early 60s, and if I went in professional football, I probably wouldn't have spent enough time with her. So I suppose when you weigh everything up, I got to spend a good part of my life with my mum, and like I say, maybe it's meant to be. It's destiny.
When you talk about being at Lisburn Distillery at the time, and Paul's the manager, and you get this rapport built up where your confidence obviously kicks in. And I had a conversation with somebody yesterday around football and how football's moments, and regardless of the moment, it can be scoring plenty of goals as you did, or it could be a changing moment where you were supposed to start or something falls in line for you to do that. But how do you feel that moment was for you? Did you think that, did you ever have probably the best way to say this, did you ever have like a negligence where you thought that maybe this isn't going to work out?
Yeah.
And then that game just kind of like cements that.
Totally. I remember during the week before, I had no confidence whatsoever. I was going to training, praying not to even receive a pass. That's how much I doubted myself. And I remember coming home, we trained at Ashfield. I remember saying to my dad, listen, I'm not good enough for the Irish League. Yeah, not good enough. I'll go back and play for Kilmore. I'll give Kilmore the time. I'm not happy. And I knew you're not silly. My teammates then I could tell that they were looking at me going, he's not going to do it for us on Saturday. And it was that day, that following Saturday, where I ended up scoring 2. And I remember that game. I remember I actually hit Elliot Morris early. I remember thinking to myself, this is my last game. I need to make an impact here. I remember thinking to myself, Glen Torn flying high. I just been then. Remember, ball was coming in. I remember just hitting Elliot Morris. And that's not me, but I remember just doing it. I remember just running, putting the body in the line. Darren Armour scored the penalty. I ended up scoring 2, and just a run and run and run. And that was like the turning point, because then the next day there was headlines. And in fairness to Paul Kirk, like I'm doing a lot of research now, and I don't want to bore the listeners, but it's around the coach-athlete relationship and how important a coach-athlete relationship is and was for me then. And it's something I try and take into my coaching, where I don't bamboozle kids with
tactics and all
at early stage. I don't want my insecurities as a coach to sort of make them be confused. And Paul was very simple. He looked the part. He came in bubbly. He was a bit of a salesman, and he filled you with love, and he made me feel great about myself. He talked about even like the art of running in behind, and I can remember just having that connection with him, and like I remember him telling me he loved me, that sort of thing, and it just was the right person at the right time for me. And that moment in that game, going from the Tuesday night, I think it was the Tuesday night, where I'm not good enough for this, I'm going back and play for my hometown team. Like, everyone has self-doubt, everyone. And I'm a deep thinker. I'm really, really critical. I overthink. It can be a real limitation. And that Saturday gave me a little bit of destiny, but a little bit of resilience for me. And
the next Tuesday, you're got the cape on, the hat.
Honestly, it was like
the roof, and you're ready to go.
Yeah, I can remember picking up the papers the next day and seeing my headlines, and like it's just
somebody turned the water tap on.
Exactly.
Get it?
Yeah, I like that. I didn't get it, but now I get it. So that was the moment, and I wouldn't say I didn't look back from them, but that was the uphill trajectory from a domestic Irish League career, because I got my move in eventually from Distillery over to, I was supposed to sign for Aberdeen, deadline day, fell through, ended up going to Hamilton Accies, and they were going up into the SPL, and that was probably the moment.
So how does that move come around? Because you've literally just touched on there how you're pretty much brinking edge of going back and giving up, and then you scored 2 goals, and
it was a season later.
What age are you at this time?
19.
So you go into Distillery about 19, on the verge of kind of jacking it all in, going back to Kilmore, and a year later you're...
Space of 6 months, I was scoring goals at Windsor, the Oval. I mean, at this stage, I was good.
Yeah.
I can honestly say it's one of the most productive time in my career. I was young, I was quick, hungry. I was playing a good team. Ram McCann's, Conor Higgins, Andy Kilmartins, those types of players. Buchanan, Muir playing behind me, that just
allowed you to probably go and do what you needed.
Those players were great with me.
Yeah.
Andrew Dixon, just players who just looked after me and seen something in me. And then Gary Brown, Darren Armour, and they nearly just let me go and play. And they were the ones who they looked at the game. They were the ones who did all the dirty work and just let me go and run channels and play. And they nearly adapted to get me. And it's just, again, like the right team at the right time.
Well, it says here from a bit of research that you get 57 appearances, 25 goals. You're 1 in every 2. That's for a 19-year-old in the Irish League is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you were doing that nowadays, somebody would be paying big money for you.
Yeah, it was a good time, but I really felt loved. Like the Distillery fans took to me. I know there wasn't many of them, but they were quality. Took to me, and like, Paul Kirk, he was honestly just the right person at the right time. I was supposed to go to Aberdeen again. I'm very, imposter syndrome. Like Aberdeen and Distillery couldn't agree terms, and maybe it wasn't the right thing that it did. Deadline day, didn't have much thinking time, but I ended up, next thing I knew, I was in Scotland signing for a team who's going to the SPL.
Dream come true at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, I had debut at Abertawdry in the Scottish Cup. I had one start and I scored, 1 start, 1 goal. But if I'm being totally honest, I never really let myself settle. There was always a thing in the back of my mind that just wouldn't. I listened to a podcast recently, Craig Bellamy and High Performance Podcast, and he spoke about nearly wanting to quit and looking for a reason to quit. I was really looking for a reason to quit all the time. I wish what we have in place now at the Irish FA in terms of our wider holistic welfare support was there at the time. I just needed something. I felt of no value because I wasn't starting any games at the start. The gym program, I was in the gym with like nearly 15, 16-year-olds because I was so far behind that I've never heard of a clean and jerk or a squat at this stage, and I was just a million miles off it from where I needed to be, or where I perceived I needed to be. When I was played, again, a little bit of imposter syndrome, didn't really know my role tactically, and managers gave me instruction, it was just far too much for me. But I remember when I played, I was good.
Yeah. And
if I had, hindsight is a wonderful thing, but if I was telling my 20-year-old self now, I would say, listen, it's part and parcel of the process. You're not going to go there and be perfect. You're going to have to go there and learn. Take yourself 6 months. Give yourself time. Take a bit of medicine and go and do extra. But I couldn't. And again, probably my family values, when I wasn't playing or scoring, I felt I wasn't really contributing to society. If I wasn't contributing to the football club, then I would get down on myself. So a lot of things going on in my head instead of just trying to play the game. But I have to own what's happened. It doesn't make me a bad person. I came home and I end up carving out a really nice domestic career for myself, and it gave me a chance to go and study the other side of the game. I went and I think I had my pro license by the time I was like 29, 30. I really, really loved coaching. I loved from getting my fingers burned from not really understanding the game of Scotland. And like the type of player I wouldn't have said I was a real educated, clever player, because I was instinct, I was quick, I was direct, industrious, wasn't technically great, but I had a real love for then the tactical side, technique, what makes a good player, and then this new sort of understanding of the coaching world, the coaching context of coach-athlete relationships and all that sort of stuff is what I think is probably molded me into what I do now.
Do you think that this is probably, you being in the position that you're in now with the FA and the job, is probably the most ideal person, considering you understand how much of a difference it is? Like, the league's still not fully full-time. Mm-hmm. And I know there's a lot of people in here, like if you're the top 4 or 5, maybe borderline 6 if Cliftonville can kick on now, but there's a lot of clubs that are still going to be left part-time. And a lot of players going across from younger age who are still part-time, and you're probably the best person to be able to educate these people on the fact that there is a massive difference from part-time to full-time.
Yeah, look, I'm probably the right person now, but there will be somebody better, and probably coming along, we'll have to take this forward. I think that's a good point that you make. I think I'm committed professionally, but also personally. My motivation isn't just, professionally, it's also that motivation that whenever I see young players, that I sort of feel like, well, I was there. And here's the mistakes I made, here's the feelings that I had, and this doesn't make you a bad person. I believe there's two avenues to hopefully a professional game, or wearing the green jersey, as we will say. You can go through early, like the Johnny Evans route, Conor Bradley route, or there's the Stuart Dallas, the Gareth McCauley route, the Matty Ower,
he's just went this week,
Trey Hume, And I think our domestic league, the one thing it has, it is a really good developing league. It allows our better players, our high potential players, to play against like the men's game early, and all those attributes that come with that, of having to win on a Saturday, of having to be robust, and I think it's great. Yeah, and I think for those part-time players, it's tough because you probably have to take more ownership of your day-to-day. And so I'm just using England as an example. You might have a professional team there. You might have a lot more staff because of a lot more money, a lot more, education around diet, where we probably have more volunteers and probably just don't have the professional workforce yet. But it's still you against you. It's still, I think, if you really have that appetite to be,
if you have that sort of mentality from a young age with John and Dee, you're halfway there.
Yeah, and look, and that's what my job is. I need a team. Our team's great. We're committed to the players. We're committed to our national team, and like we make it really clear that we want players to go on and play as high as they can, and then hopefully fulfil their dreams by playing international football for Northern Ireland.
See, when you come back from full time and you start focusing on getting back into the league, you're probably part time. You signed for Glentoran when you came back. You fitted into a very good Glentoran team. I think we've spoke about this many a time. I think the likes of Gary Hamilton stuff was still up front. I think Matty had just signed as well when you had signed, and obviously the Glens had just went on. They were probably at their best at that stage.
Yeah, we won the league.
You won the league for probably your first season back.
Yeah.
Were you more so focused on getting settled into education, or were you like, I have a point to prove, I want to come back, I want to make headway here, and I want to just kick on now with football? Or were you still like down from the fact that you knew that you were coming back from?
I was in a bad place. Yeah, I come back, and I can remember just go back to training 2 nights a week, and I'm thinking to myself, like, in my head, how I perceived it was, I went from being on the cusp of the scene of Nigel Worthington and speaking to me about being in the senior international team, to being, further away from that, training twice a week. I was a little bit down on myself, and then I remember playing my first league games against Bangor on a Sunday, and I was horrendous. I mean, horrendous. And Glentoran, as you know, there's massive expectation, big fan base, like they demand, like the greats that played over the years, and I just wasn't there. I just, I wasn't at my best. Probably thinking they're getting the Andrew Waterworth from the distillery, but they didn't. And I let everything get to me. I was reading headlines where I was getting criticism, and I probably wanted to blame journalists for giving me bad headlines, and I was thinking I'm putting everything into this, and I wasn't delivering. And every stage of my life, whenever I don't take responsibility, no matter what I'm doing, football or career, I look at myself and go, look, why am I really cross? It's because I'm not delivering. So what I got to do about it? And it wasn't maybe until, because like Al McDonald had signed me, I wanted to give Alan everything. Scott Young was there at the time, and Scott was good to me, and I couldn't repay. I just could not get fined before him. And I think then whenever Tiernan Lynch and Eddie Patterson come in, felt again that coach-athlete relationship. Tiernan really connected with me. He gave me a lot of belief. I remember, in fairness to me, I wasn't playing well, but I was fit. I run the yo-yo test out one night up at the...
I don't know what that would ever be like.
Yeah, look, I know. when you're a player, doesn't have much technique and has to rely on your fitness, the things you have to do. And I remember that sort of got in their eyes, and it got me in their eyes. And from then, I think the scene a 9, a centre forward, and I wasn't playing at the stage of 9 for Glentoran because I couldn't be trusted. And I was right at the play 9 because I couldn't hold the ball up, I couldn't make it stick, I wasn't scoring goals. So they were trying to fit me right and left, and I wasn't a right midfielder. I wasn't a left midfielder. I didn't have the technique for it, didn't have the understanding. I was a 9.
You didn't want to cross balls,
I didn't want to cross balls. I didn't understand how to come inside and create space. I wasn't that type of player. But I knew I was a 9. I wanted to score goals. I wanted to chase lost causes. And I think Tiernan and Eddie particularly Tiernan had seen that in me. Eddie was like, he brought a real sense of professionalism, and Tiernan showed me tips of himself, and he more or less said, look, you're doing all this sort of stuff, but you're not putting the ball in the net on Saturday. And like, in fairness, like, even with Scott Young seen potential in me, and he was session after session, he kept me behind, he was hitting balls into me as a centre forward. I was holding the ball up perfect at training, but when it came to match day, just wasn't coming together. But what I realised was that it was probably more the psychological aspect of a
But
match day that
subconsciously you're thinking that the pressure builds. Like when you're in training, there's nothing.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And you can do stupid touches and you can do things, as you said, at perfection near enough, and you're going, I'm comfortable here.
And sometimes
when you know that there's a big defender coming clean at the back end, you're going to get kicked and elbowed.
And sorry for cutting across you, but sometimes, because I had this conversation with a couple of academy coaches in England recently, sometimes players just need time.
Yeah.
And that's the greatest gift. Sometimes managers don't have time, but if you do have time and they're young players, or there's a player going through a bad time, sometimes they just need time.
Yeah.
Need a better breathing space, and they'll eventually, because they're good players, they'll eventually figure it out. Something will click, something will come. And if you can give that young player particularly time, just give them time to breathe, and it'll come. It'll come.
Just to keep you on that then, do you think that our league at the minute is geared around giving kids the opportunity?
I do, yeah. I think it's a great league. I'm biased. I think we've loads and loads of room for improvement. I have the privilege of speaking to Jared Lawler quite a lot, about our league. I think there's no doubt about it that there's a lot of things I think we know where we're at. But I think it's a great league, particularly for young players who want to progress. I think if you look at the league, there's a good percentage of players that serviced it before getting into our senior international team. Mm-hmm. I watch games most Saturdays. I enjoy the league. There's times where I can be critical, and I think some games can be like all leagues, but I do think there's a real quality in our league now. I mean, I watched the game recently, Larne against Cliftonville, and I really enjoyed that game as much as I've enjoyed any game. So I think we're in a good place, but I think there is can't get carried away with ourselves, or there's still
a long way to go.
Yeah, I think the European, I think we've got to crack our teams qualifying for Europe. I think it's going to take an effort through us, the RCFA, our governing body, and through the league and through the clubs. But I think I'm telling you something that we all know that we have to do.
When you make that move from Glentoran, and you say that sort of switch moment with Eddie and Tiernan comes in, gets you to a standard where you're like, I'm confident, I'm ready to go again, you're back scoring goals, and Linfield come knocking. Are you at a moment there where you're thinking, hard for me to go from Glens to Linfield, or are you going, I'm relishing the opportunity to go and sign for Linfield?
There was a lot of clarity in my mind. I was told, so I agreed to go to the Blues in January. We won the Irish Cup in May. Mm-hmm. But in November, and in fairness to Eddie and Tiernan and Seamus, they did a great job, because we weren't getting paid. Our players were focused at the time, because there was financial difficulties across the world. Yeah. So we understood that, and I was living with my mum and dad, so it wasn't as if I was at a mortgage or whatever. But and I was told in November that they couldn't be in a position to offer me a contract, and they probably weren't going to be in a position to offer me a contract. So that they said that we could, and because we weren't getting paid, that we could go and speak to other clubs. And I'd met, Dundalk, Derry City at the time, and step forward, David Jeffrey. He was, we talk about the right person at the right time, a coach-athlete relationship, how David Jeffrey made me feel. He walked me into Windsor, and I'm a very much a faded, got to feel it.
You'll never forget it.
Yeah.
It's like a presence, like an aura. It's like you get soaked up in a bubble, a shell, that you're like, I can't actually say no here.
He says, Andrew, you've said no to me once, you will not say no to me twice. And he told me that he believes that I'm meant to play for this club. He says I believed him. So there's him and Brian and Alfie, and had me in his office, and I remember leaving feeling like really that's where the next chapter is, and I had clarity in my head then that's where I needed to be. And I knew, I understood that there would be and I understood, because you're leaving to go to the rivals, but I think if anybody seen the full picture, they would also understand. And I was ready for the challenge. Yeah. I knew we'd get a bit of stick. In my mind, I was ready for it, and that's why I ultimately made the switch. So it was
well, what was What was psychologically different at this stage for you to think that I'm ready to take that? Because for you to be so hypercritical of yourself over the years, look at the journalists, look at everything it's said.
You feel like, you feel disloyal for a start, because you feel that but I could very quickly process the fact that I wasn't getting the contract there, and for me to go somewhere else just because I thought, no, I'll do this for me, and this feels right, and I followed that, and I was right to follow it, because then it turned out, very successful spell for me.
Magical, probably is.
Yeah, like everything about it was magical. Like, I mean, I scored on my debut, I broke my leg on my debut, and then come back against Ballymena, replaying, scored a hat-trick on my debut.
Unfortunately.
Everything that I'd done, like the hat-trick in the cup final, the hat-trick to win the league, like everything that I had done at Linfield was like, I just felt was meant to be.
Yeah.
And if I maybe didn't have my prerequisite of playing for, like, Glens or whatever, I probably couldn't have faced what I was about to face at Linfield, because it is demanding. But I was ready. I needed that where I was at, because I wanted to win trophies. I felt like my career would pause for like 4 years, and I just everything that Linfield was offering and challenging, I was ready for. The first couple of years were tough because Cliftonville and Crusaders are winning the leagues, and I've never had any football affect my life as much as that did. I felt like I wasn't, but I felt like I was carrying the world and Linfield's history on my shoulders.
There must be a different feeling though, and I can't come to terms with it because obviously I haven't been there, but when you look at Glentoe and you look at Linfield and you see the pressure and the fans and how things amass on players, and Linfield could be winning 1-0 at the weekend, but it's not good enough. Yeah,
and I think it's worse. I think there is a little bit of romanticism there. I think it is worse than when you're in it. When you're in it, you're just focused on the game. Like, you could score a couple of goals, you're still getting criticised from the stands, but I think they keep you honest. I think what they've seen over the years and all the trophies that they've won and all the great teams, I think they're used to just seeing great. So I nearly seen it as a nice thing. And
do you feel like that helps? Do you feel like that their history helps you win? Because sometimes when you're playing against Linfield, and Linfield have this aura, the bubble, you're playing against Linfield today at Windsor Park, there's always not a bit of self-doubt, but it's hard to put it into terms where you're not beat before you play, but you know that it's like you're coming up against a glass. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it can work both ways. Like, I think, whenever you're vulnerable as a Linfield or a Glentoe or whatever, if you're the opposition team, the fans will get on their back, so get a goal early, whatever, so you can use that to your advantage. But if you're winning, and if you're in a good place, yeah, it can be intimidating. I mean, I remember visiting Windsor Park as a young Ards player, distillery player. I remember seeing you're warming up, and Linfield players, when you walk over your warm up, they're running out, and the side stands roaring, and you're like, oh, you're seeing Glenn Ferguson, and it sort of intimidates you a little bit. So I think it does work both ways. I think David Jeffrey, who signed me, he was very good at protecting you as a manager. Like, he always would have made a reference to him. I was criticised here. I was always told I wasn't as good as the players before me, and like, I felt that, like, listen, I was never going to try and compare myself to Glenn Ferguson, Peter Thompson. I'm sure Peter Thompson and Glenn Ferguson then compared to centre forwards, Duke of Windsor and so on before them. I think that's just part and parcel. But I certainly felt at the time Linfield were chasing redemption. They hadn't Cliftonville won the league. They were in a place where they wanted to win the league back, and I wanted to win the league. I wanted to, because when I won the league at Glentoe, I sort of felt I was in the team, but I wasn't one of the main men. And that's what I want. That's ultimately I wanted to do. I was at a stage in my career I was ready to sort of sacrifice everything. Even though I wasn't full time at Linfield, I went to university and I played for Linfield. There was nothing else I did. Every day I woke up and I was training to play for Linfield on a Saturday.
When you talk about being at Linfield, the confidence that comes out right now is obviously a lot different than the confidence that you had at any other club. But would you say that Windsor Park would be like home?
Yeah, I think it would be. I was lucky that I got a good start. I got a really good start, and fans then, I remember singing my name. I can remember the reception then I got when I started to score goals, and look, I think Linfield fans love a number 9. I think that you could be, I think they like somebody who puts the ball in the net, and I wanted to be that person. Sometimes in games I didn't do much, but I still stuck the ball in the net, and it was a nice place to be when you're doing well. And I didn't even mind it when I wasn't doing well. I think, like I said, the prerequisite, the career that I had before, I had so many ups and downs. I had all the criticism that I nearly had seen it all before, so I was ready for it.
You could take that on, the skin and hardened at that stage.
Yeah,
and you were.
And look, I'm a human being. There's times whenever I was unconfident, I was going through a bad patch, but I was really ready for whatever was coming my way. And then eventually, I think 4 years later, that we were able to win the league, and that was just like such a weight of the world off my shoulders. I actually felt at one stage I'm going to be one of those players at Linfield that just did not add to their illustrious history.
You didn't,
honestly,
you didn't want to be that guy.
I didn't want to be that guy, and I'm not even that I'm criticising that guy, but I can just remember feeling that I wanted it so much, and I wanted to.
It would be one of the worst things that if you were to sign for Linfield and not come away with a trophy, you'd be like, how have I signed for one of the biggest clubs in the country and not one? They win something usually every year.
And listen, I was going that way because it was like 3-4 years before. I'll never forget the day, sitting in Solitude as well, where we're winning the league, or 1-0 down at half time. And I remember thinking to myself, and I remember David Healy's famous speech, and it's nearly like I felt he was speaking to me. He said, look, people say they want to win the league, and do you really want to win the league? Search into your souls. And I thought, right person at the right time, the right thing to say. And I think
you had a few managers across that spell that you were at Linfield, so obviously David was the person who brought you in, filled you with confidence. I think Fino was there for a while.
Mm-hmm. Played good football under Fino. Fino was a good coach, fun. I think he really backed me. He gave me a captaincy. He a manager who I felt really backed me. I think I had my biggest goal return under Warren Feeney.
Do you think that him giving you that captaincy just propelled you to like a different level that you thought you were at, because you were able to pretty much lead at that stage? Do you think you were ready for it?
Yeah, I remember I only been there for a season. I had to sign for Linfield, and before I knew it, Billy Joe Burns was gone, Philip Lowry was gone, Michael Gott was gone, Mike Murphy was gone, all the players, that Jim Irvin was gone. But I'm thinking, I'm going to this experienced change room, and then within like 9 months they're gone, and I'm looking around, and I'm one of the most experienced players in the team. And I think at the time Mulgrew was out of the team, which would be a natural candidate for captaincy, and probably one of the greatest Linfield players ever.
Absolutely.
So I think just because I was starting every week, that I probably kneeled on to start at that time, that he felt I was a natural captain, and like I loved it. But it gave me a tough time because I lost 2 finals at the end of that year, and I took a lot of that burden myself. I could remember blaming myself, and was I not a good captain, and did I have to display good captain leadership qualities. So it as much as it was an absolute privilege, it felt heavy in the end.
Yeah.
And then next year, whenever David Healy came in, we passed the captaincy on to Jamie, and I think the biggest compliment that I can give myself, and Gary Eccles always reminds me, was that I took it really well. It was tough, but it felt whatever is best for the team. I'm a team player,
yeah,
and Gary Eccles, as you know, is a there's not much goes past him when it comes to Linfield Football Club, and he always reminds me of it. He felt as one of the...
He's been there 40, 50, 50 years or so.
Like he is, and I consider him a good friend. He's a real...
He's a real character.
He's a real gem in that dressing room, And, David came in. He was hell-bent on change. He grew up supporting the club. He knew what good looked like. I think there was question marks over him as a manager because he was young, just left coaching, or just left his playing days, and he was ruthless. But one thing you could say is he really wanted to win the league, and we could sense that.
Yeah.
And thankfully he did, because then we had a real good spell of success under him. And the thing with David Healy is that I think I needed it. Looking back retrospectively, at the time he wasn't a manager that wanted to be your friend, and I always felt like he doubted me, or he was trying to replace me. But when I think about it now, I think actually he felt that we had a tight knit change room, but we weren't a winning change room. He felt he had to go in and upset the apple cart, and he had to really challenge me, and I went in every season thinking to myself, I'm going to prove him wrong. I need to prove him again and again and again. And I think when you look at it, that's what Linfield's all about.
It is.
You know, you can't sort of rest and we've won the league. You've got to keep moving and keep proving. And that famous saying that, you know, he's alluded to so many times about coasters, you know, coast out Linfield, and that he certainly created that environment, and he challenged me. And I even find, even in my coaching day to day now, I'm throwing a few David Healy sayings and comments out.
I'm sure he'll be absolutely buzzing to know that, to be honest. But just to clarify for people who, obviously Linfield fans don't know this, but 349 appearances and 190 goals.
Yeah, that was good.
You're on record there to be saying if you were there for a few more years, you would probably be highlighted as the likes of your Spikes and the rest of the boys.
Well, look, I don't think I think Glenn Ferguson's probably in my lifetime, the best RSC player I've ever seen. I don't think I would even. I think his all-round game, I think everything about him.
He was able to do it all, but I mean,
yeah.
I mean, people have different attributes, but at the times, and one of the things that I'll have to say, because obviously I grew up with the spell where you were probably at your pump, and we came into it and you were at Linfield, and it just seemed like every week you were scoring, but Linfield played to you, feeling like a lot of people get their joy out of certain aspects of the game, and if you have a centre forward who can score goals but you don't utilise it in the right way, I feel like that was your calling card, where they knew that Andy can be here, just get Andy the ball.
Yeah.
It was hard to watch most weeks, or especially playing against you, because you knew that he's going to score here at some stage, because they just had a way of getting you the ball.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a good team, very much a team that we had, and we had some good players.
Team of quality, but a team of wild characters, and
yeah,
I think Mr. Kirk Miller's probably one of the
Kirk
running the forefront. That he's still there. He's 12 years in, I think now, or something, which is incredible as well.
What a guy! The amount of goals he contributed significantly. You know, with crosses, just a clever footballer, just a good footballer, a good person. I don't know anybody that doesn't like him. And I felt the team knew that, you know, I felt that sometimes I did a lot of work behind the scenes, but I let the better players play. I stretched the game. I let them get on the ball, and like my motivation was scoring goals. The feeling that I've scored a goal, put the ball in the net, it was the best feeling in the world. I wanted to be the person that runs with the crowd, and I think as long as you're doing that, teams will accept maybe a bad touch, or, you know, maybe not being involved in build up.
Centre forwards,
I was comfortable. I
did
not.
They're curtain, don't know, on putting ball in the net, and you don't really have to be involved in play. And that's one of the things that I struggled with. I loved it at Ballymena under David, because I feel like we were quite similar. I wouldn't say anything in terms of your stats.
I think we were, yeah.
We would have ran channels and we would have done that dog work, and I felt like my time at David suited that. But whenever you go to Lauren, and Tiernan doesn't want you to touch the ball or be involved until the ball gets to that end of the pitch, and then you're just there to tap it in.
Yeah.
I don't think that I was technically switched on. I think I was more, let me run around and try and impose myself.
But it becomes a taught skill. I think you have to learn how to play centre forward. I think you have to learn your timings, you know, to balance the pitch off. You know, if the ball's worked on one side, can you occupy centre halves? Can you be an out and then out of possession to stay connected to your team? I think there becomes a skilled coaching process with a natural nine. And like, you scored much better goals than I scored. Like, I've been jealous of your collection of goals. I could never have the technique, the technical competence.
Probably because I was too lazy on later on. But I just just hit it and hope. You know,
I was anything outside the 6-yard box, I would have struggled.
I'd have preferred to be standing the 6-yard box if somebody crossed me the ball. You know what I mean? So I will not get too far.
But a 9 is like it's a real. It's tough because it can be ego. Like, if you're not touching the ball and you think I have to get involved in build up, or people are going to think I've played, but I was comfortable of you know, staying away, and because I knew that something Tiernan said early doors, like, you need to be the guy that puts the ball in the net.
Yeah.
So we need somebody in there.
It's mad too how people have different visions for people, and as most of your career you've probably been running channels or doing whatever, and they're just going, we're just going to change it. We know that you can do this. And being able to highlight that and identify those things is probably something that you work on now.
It is. I think David Healy changed, you know, he said to me, like, your pace will go at some stage. You need to be a player that, like, and he always felt that I could have played at a higher level if I learned how to use my body, you know, how to back into defenders, and he was hell-bent on getting this through to me, and I understand now. I understand. Like, I wish I had knew it earlier.
Yep.
Sometimes it was too honest, whereas like, nudge for the defender, nudge for you, and like he was so good at it. If you watch him playing his days, and I think he probably looked at me with the pace that I had and thought, with your pace, and if you learned this other little bit of being a little more streetwise, then you could go further in the game. Mm-hmm. So there is a lot of, I think if you park your ego, if you're willing to be coached and willing to be open to new information, then you can definitely become a much better player,
especially an all-around better player. I don't know anyone who would shy away from it and not want to do it. I think if somebody's going to invest their time into potentially trying to make you better,
mm-hmm.
it's beneficial.
Yeah,
always beneficial, even if it's a player. Sometimes you touched on Dermot O'Carroll earlier. Dermot was with me at Cliftonville, and he was so good at holding the ball up and inviting play on, and he was, even from a young age, I think he was 18, and he was trying to tell you what to do, and you're saying, well, like, I'm not going to ever say no to this fella, like, if he's going to take his time to do this. Whereas I think now sometimes kids can be, I know what I'm doing, I'm alright.
Yeah.
And it's upsetting.
Because it can be, a dent to the ego, having to listen and take on advice, and it could come across as if you're being criticised. But I think if you look past that and go, well, look, this person's given me, it's how you really interpret it, and how much appetite you have to get to the next level. And that's why I felt the whole time I was bad at holding the ball up early years, but it wasn't because my technique was bad. It's because I didn't understand timing. I didn't understand how to use my body. I was always trying to come towards the ball and maybe be too honest. Whereas
not slowing yourself.
There's that little nugget of, listen, feel the defender first, understand where you are on the pitch, understand whether your ball, the touch has to be manipulated. It's like a golf lie, which I'm trying to learn now. I think it's different lies for different shots and different irons for different lies on the golf course. A little bit of golf IQ. It's the same as football, and it probably came a little bit later in my career that I knew how to do that, and I'm glad, because then, like, from 34 onwards, I had lost a good bit of my pace. I was still able to play centre forward for Linfield because I had adapted and modified the game.
What was the main reason behind leaving?
The main reason behind leaving was that Linfield were going full time, and I was 35 years of age, and I had just recently been employed as the director of elite player development.
You have to weigh it up at that stage.
Yeah. And Pat Fenlon met me and says, there's a contract here for you, and I was very grateful. He said, the service you've given Linfield, we'll make it work. But I didn't want to be, I knew then it was time for somebody else to come in, because I didn't want to be sort of half-hearted at Linfield. If they were training full-time, me coming in 2 days a week, and at this stage Shane Lavery was the number 9, I was sort of the understudy, and so I just felt like I could go, but the respect I have for the club, the respect I have for the players, my teammates, no point me going there being, half in. So I decided then it was time to leave and part my Linfield career, and it was tough because it was great, it was fun, I loved every part of it, and I was quite sad that I wasn't going to be a part of that football club anymore. And even the last day, my daughter was just born. The last game, I was able to score on TV and with my daughter at the game.
Amazing.
Which just felt like I said, from the very first game, it was like a meant to be destiny, and then the last game. So, and with Glenavon, I'd promised Gary Hamilton the whole time that I would end up with Glenavon. Gary would have been constantly on the phone to me, trying to sign me a couple of times at Linfield when it looked as if my career was over, and I was really close, and then I changed my mind and I stayed at Linfield. I'm glad I did, because if it didn't feel right, then and it worked out for me. And I thought myself part-time, and what a club. A club I always admired from afar.
Yeah.
I thought it was a great ground, great history, great fan base. And
him as well, for what he's done over the years with the kids, bringing people through, identifying talent and allowing people to actually go and play.
Mm-hmm.
He's done a tremendous job over the years, getting them to Europe, Irish Cup finals. Probably doesn't get the amount of credit that he probably deserves.
Very pragmatic, there's no nonsense behind him. He wants to get the ball down, get it forward. Probably doesn't have time for ego. He's got to work hard. But it was just probably the wrong time for me. Personally, my mother was ill. I just started this new job. I remember my first game I played, I scored 2 against Warren Point, then I got COVID, and then I was out of the team for a couple of weeks. And to be honest, Johnny, see, at that stage of my life, I was actually travelling to games with no food in my stomach because, I was, caring for my mum. I was started this new job. And I remember thinking to myself, I am not giving this anything. And I had a conversation with Gary, I'll move on here. Let's just cancel the contract. But I think, a couple of players had just left but I didn't want to see him stuck. So
yeah, he stuck it out
maybe to the end of the year. But then come April time, I had a stroke. So, from then I was, I knew it was time to probably call it a day and give time to my personal life, give time to try and heal what had happened to me, process what had happened to me. I just didn't have time to even think about football.
Do you look back on that time and think to yourself, you've ultimately tried to do somebody a favour at your own peril, near enough?
Sometimes I'm a people pleaser. Sometimes I try to be too nice and have the best intentions. And I think you got to take responsibility for what you're going to do. And just because you're trying to do something for somebody doesn't make it the right thing.
And it's selfish in this word too.
It's not even selfish. It's because if you make the ultimate decision, it's not as if Glenavon were going to fold or they left, or that we're going to. I wasn't really contributing anyway, so I was trying to do far too many things, and I didn't even have time for one child at a time, or my family, my missus. I was just going from pillar to post. I was working every hour because I had this new role, and I felt I had to give it. Through experience, you realise afterwards, you don't need to be doing that. But I was trying to watch every youth game in the country and trying to play for Glenavon. As I said, to try to be like a son to my mother and try to be a husband to my wife, a father, and just something I had to give. And even though, like I said, you had that health issue, I had a stroke, and it was, physiological, it was biomechanics. I think spiritually, it was maybe a sign to say, listen,
time to leave things behind.
Time to
take it easy.
Yeah, refocus your life and be grateful for what you have and basically take a breath.
When you talk about having a stroke, do you think that it was primarily stress related at that stage, or is there any diagnosis to that? And
the diagnosis was I have a PFO, so it's a little gap, in layman's terms, a little gap in your heart that I was born with. I think 25%. I don't even want to quote percentages because I'm not medically trained or clinically trained, so I might upset a few people, but I had a hole in my heart that was always there, and in the hole in my heart, your right side and your left side of your heart aren't supposed to speak to each other. And there was a little gap in mine, and a clot had got through where it wasn't supposed to get through. It ended up in my head. And medically, the doctors have told me that this is just part of your genetics. This isn't stress related. It isn't. So I was very, very fortunate again that what had happened. I have no real condition after it. Again, it took me a while to process. I just lost my mother maybe a month before, so I was thinking, stress, grief, whatever. And I genuinely look back now, and I think I'm so fortunate to be. Wouldn't say as drastic as living or dramatic as living, but
well, you don't know the extent of the stroke. Anyone can have a stroke.
Yeah, mine
can be minor, it can be.
Mine was a full strong stroke and affected the back of my head. And it was coordination, so I had lost a little bit of what I felt at the time was eyesight. It was just alignment of coordination, and that I was feeling great. I was physically fit. I was training. I was playing Irish League football. I remember doing a gym session that Saturday because I didn't even play for Glenavon that Saturday. I was a sub not used. Back and did a full gym session. Ended up that night, I woke up the next morning and I was just, I was seeing double vision.
Just trying to put into context here, the whole process of this, but if you go and have a stroke and you've just lost your mum, what sort of stress does that leave on the missus and the kids? And obviously you've just taken on this new job, and how was the IFA with you
great
this time? And
IFA were great. Like I said, I have a great team. Nothing really changes. That's the thing that you realise, is that you're part of a team, that the team can function without you. Everyone, there's no problem with the Irish FA. They understood. I was once I was able to process the information, I got sort of good news that, I'll make a full recovery. And they gave me as much time as I needed. And like I took 4 to 6 weeks off. That's all I needed. Thankfully the week after my stroke, it was
4 to 6 weeks straight back at it.
Like, and you asked me about my family. I didn't even think about it. And it was quite selfish of me, but I wasn't dealing, probably, I was grieving, but I wasn't really processing it or talking about it. I just sort of got on with things. And like I said, my stroke happened, and as much as I felt really vulnerable, it's the first time my health had let me down in my life. Come back to my personality. I'm analytical, overthinker. I was thinking the worst. Why did this happen? But like Dr. Enda Kerr, hopefully doesn't mind me name checking him, was the stroke doctor, stroke consultant at the Royal, was great with me. He spent time personally and gave me like a full overview. He was trying to explain a lot to me, and I was still in a place where I just couldn't get clarity over my health. And then I was told I needed an operation to close a little gap in my heart. They sent me to see in the Ulster Independent, Dr. Colin Owens, and Dr. Colin Owens is one of these, somebody says draw a doctor, you could draw him. He's quite articulate and confident, and he said the words to me, listen, you're going to be fine, you're going to be okay. It was the first time I felt reassurance, and it took me a while to get over it, to really get back to, because the limitations afterwards, like the condition I had afterwards, I would get quite dizzy, even long meetings, dizzy, but thankfully that passes. And then what I did come away with, a little bit more faith and a little bit more gratitude for what I have in life.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, even though it was genetics, I said it was all physiological, I think a certain aspect of that was where it made me live in the moment more and be thankful for what I have. And that's how I've tried to, deal with things or
move on with it
ever since. So tough month, and I tried to please, I tried to play through things, and I just probably didn't give myself a chance to process the death of my mother, because I was very close to my mum, and she had a terrible illness. She had dementia really early, and it was just death by 1,000 cuts. And then with my own personal health issues, and then the year after I lost my father, so it was a pretty tough time. But again, go back to gratitude. Very blessed that I had a mother and father who were really good to me. They set me up in life. They taught me again to be a good person. I think everything that I do in life comes from the values that they have taught me. So I don't think I could get through or get over half the things that I do without the time or that they invested in me. And you would do it. You ask any mother and father, they would do the same thing for their kids. So as much as I was grieving, and you could sort of feel sorry for yourself, I feel so fortunate that I had them in my life.
When you talk about the stroke and the process of everything that's went on, the surgeries, I know this is probably in hindsight here, but were they telling you like you're going to make a full recovery, and if you wanted to go back, you could go back type thing? Was that conversation had?
Yes and no. Yeah, I think if I wanted to, I could have went back, but I'm on antiplatelet blood thinning medication as an insurance policy, and I don't think you can play a professional sport if you're on them. Maybe you can, I don't know. But even at times I felt I wanted to go back, I didn't have enough appetite to go, I'm going to go back.
Yeah, you were content with
I was content.
Everything at that stage anyway.
And I felt that if I did go back, because of my job and the passion I had for my job, and I felt to do my job right, I had to sort of park my playing and be the coach now, or be the other side. So I didn't want to sell anybody short again. I didn't want to start. So I just felt like this is my chapter's over. I'm not the Andrew Waterworth that was, banging goals in every week, or was. So I just made the decision that I was comfortable, and maybe give my family a little bit back, and
it has to come full circle at some stage, doesn't it?
Exactly. And I genuinely enjoying my job. I was enjoying what I was doing. I was getting my football, kicks. So that's how I was able to process it in my head. But it is a good question, because often the question I did ask myself, I could go back and play for this team, or I could go back here. You know, if I was going to a game, particularly European games, I was like, oh, I'd love to be playing here. And
throw me in there, I'll be alright.
I thought to myself, like, I'm fit enough, I could go back in, I could do a job here. But then I would go back into that whole cycle again. And like I said, I'm uncomfortable. I'm now no longer Andrew Waterworth, the footballer, the Irish League player.
You're the director.
Well, I wouldn't even go. I'm now pundit, maybe. Pundit, coach.
You are a pundit.
Coach, educator.
Correct.
Just a football enthusiast.
It leads me directly on to where I actually want to be, and we spoke before about the perception of who Andy is and what you do as a job and coach education and all these things, and it's something that I've thoroughly enjoyed, my process of getting the A license and stuff and doing it quite young. And when did you actually start this process? Because I think you said there by 28, 29 you had your pro license.
Mm-hmm.
And your pro license is a huge step, so I'm going to guess it's probably back at 23, 24 maybe.
Yeah, I started coaching really early. I remember Shimmy Heath, who was the local grassroots development officer at the time for our area. He had, because I played, he just more or less had me in schools coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And unintended consequence, I felt very comfortable, setting up sessions. I was coaching everywhere. He had me in community centres, he had me in schools, summer schemes. I wasn't even driving, he had me taking adult sessions. I worked with, all sorts of groups, ability, mixed ability, disability. And I really enjoyed connecting with people. I enjoyed the science of coaching. And then when you're playing, you respect good coaches, people who are able to develop relationships or give you, information that gives you that aha moment. I get it now. Brother's a teacher, he's a great teacher. He teaches history, and he always made me feel those moments where I understand now. And I think with football, I like to do that. So the more and more I coached, then I wanted more. I remember doing my old level one, which is the NCC now. I think Gary Haven was on it. I was down in, and Jamie made me do it. It was 6 Sundays and I didn't really want to do it, but I made me do it down in Brownlow. Only passed my test. I was driving down to this place called Brownlow, and I was good at it, because I remember the tutors, where Keith Gibson was the tutor, and he said that you're I don't think he said those words, but that's how I took it. I was good at it. Then I was thirsty for more. I went and done my C license, my B license, and Pascal and Stevie Robinson, Christoph, the Irish FA staff at the time were really good. I remember just feeling really, really comfortable here, and really at a place where, because I like to learn.
Yeah.
I felt like a sponge and seen the game in a different way. And then, done my A license, because I struggled with it, to be fair. Just probably bit off more than I could chew. I was still playing. But I remember Nigel Best saying, it was so true, it makes you a better player, because you start to think about the game and you understand the game. And my career, whether it was a coincidence, started to take off then, because that was a couple of later years at Glentoran, where I'd done my A license and kind of liked it. And then when I went in the Irish FA, I was working across the grassroots game, club development game, and I was doing my undergrad up at Ulster University, and I had this real passion then for coaching and the coaching science. So I then wanted to work into the coach education team. Ended up in the coach education team, and I can remember just loving it. I remember just loved looking at the game, looking at all the tactical scenarios, the detail of technique. And from then I just felt like I wanted to be in that sort of professional area, working with good players, working with people who were as passionate about coaching as I was.
I feel like the process of your coaching badges, for anyone who plays football at a high level in the Irish League or anywhere, they should definitely do it, because as you've just touched on, and it's probably an incredible point, it changes your ideas of football and makes you think about everything instead of just you.
Exactly.
But the other side of it, then, I'll give credit to, is it also makes you realise that if I was to do this and you have a manager who's doing it, the conflict of your ideas and their ideas and what you should do as you as a player and what they think you should do as their type of player, that's where I think that I struggled.
But I think it just gives you a little bit of I think there's nothing wrong with having your own perception of how you want the game played, but at the end of the day, the manager is the boss, and I think you have to give the manager respect that he is the leader of the team, and he is the one that's ultimately deciding the game plan. And that's why I respect the manager so much, because I wouldn't call myself a manager. I'm a coach. I'm coaching youth international teams, but there is a certain aspect where you're having to leave players out, and you're having to, have those conversations. And there's so much things, the management, that I don't think people give enough respect to.
Yeah.
And a player, I think managers want leadership. They want players who are curious and players who have their own ideas, but ultimately the manager has to have the strategy for the whole team, not just the one player. So I think as long as that line's there where you sort of know your role in the team and you give the manager the respect that he's the boss, I think it's fine to have your own ideas. I think managers would actually,
prefer that, to have those conversations, those open conversations.
Well, no, I certainly do. Like, even speaking to the younger players now, I mean, I look at even under 17s, under 18 internationals, you're now in first team. You want to have separate side conversations that they understand what's happening in the game so that they can lead the team on the pitch.
Yeah.
And if they're not on board, then, that's a question as a coach that you have to. It would be worse if they just had no interest and they were just sort of turning up and going through the motion.
Do you find, though, that it's beneficial for you doing this at your level because these kids are, should I say, the cream of the crop? These kids are decent mentality. They're all wanting to be her. They're technically gifted. They've got the right attitude to go and kick on, and they have the drive to be there. Does that help? Because I know usually most teams have those one or two kids that maybe don't want to be there, or bad apple in the group or whatever, but I don't know if, obviously I don't think that would happen when these kids are all brought together for you, but it must be more beneficial for you to be able to coach those kids who are all at that level.
Yeah, I think firstly different players develop at different stages. Just because they're in the elite program now doesn't mean to say that they'll end up there. And the ones who maybe aren't in the elite program now, because players will progress and come out of their shell. There's no real, like I said earlier in the conversation, time-bound moment for young players. But for the majority of players that are like, we're very lucky because they are good people, good boys first and foremost, and they have appetite to be professional footballers, and they're coachable, and that's what we're looking for. I think when you look at some of the quality, particularly the technical ability and the technical competence of young players nowadays, like, it's much better than whenever I felt I was growing up.
Oh God, even when I was coming through it, you were centre forward, you were a midfielder, or you were a defender. It's none of this 3-5-2s or.
But some of the players are so good. I mean, and they inspire me. I think if you ask our coaches, even in the program, they inspire them as well. I think you
have to be on it because you feel like you're doing them a disservice.
But even them themselves, like they're. I think Northern Irish people are humble. I think there's a lot of humility. I think it's the one thing that we bring, and that they're just good guys and wanting to do their best for us. And when they represent us, whatever program they do it with so much respect, and it's just great to be around them. It's great to be coaching and even coexisting with such good raw talent. And even the players that probably don't go on and play professional football, it's nice to be able to play a role in their career, because they'll come back in the full ecosystem, whether it's coaches, whether it's maybe my boss in years to come.
Yeah,
it's just we want to try and have a lasting impact, from our program, because I certainly felt that's what went on before me, and hopefully it was on after. And I looked at even our senior team last night, the amount of players have come through, our program, or our program's had an impact on them. It's, you can see David McDonald and Ray McConnell coming on at the end, and
like Ethan Gilbert and stuff like that.
Those players, like, we don't give them much, but it's just the fact that they're in the program. They're the good lads. They're the guys who invest all their time. They're the guys who have the ability. Whether they're 14, 13 years of age, they're still the same person, and you can tell with the humility they have and the appetite for the game. It's just great to be a part of.
Just to give an overview, just to the people who listen to the podcast, that it's pretty much trying to replicate a full-time academy as possible. So you board the kids, the coaches and stuff, and staff will stay there. Where's this done? How does it work?
Yeah, it's a good question, because maybe we don't maybe communicate this enough, but we try to replicate the EPPP system, which has been very successful in England. We understand that probably to make it into our senior international team or to have a career as a professional footballer at the highest level, you'll have to leave Northern Ireland at some stage. There's a piece of research done by Conor Kern in 2015 to say that, you know, Irish boys, north and south, struggle to settle, to leave, to live outside Ireland, north and south. So we felt there was a lot of numbers of players going across into England or Scotland and then coming home very quickly. And I was one of those guys. So the first thing we wanted to do was bring them out of their home environment and to really replicate being away from home, to expose them to the challenges that they would face if they go into England or Scotland or wider afield. So when they do get there, that they're actually prepared and it's not alien to them and they can concentrate on their football.
Yeah.
Second thing is, technically and tactically, we want to educate them, so we're getting coaching hours every single day, and then they play for their clubs at the weekend. And then we look for the physiological. So we've a guy, Simon Coleman, who works with it every day in the gym. So I think about my time in professional football, I struggled. I was way behind physically. Our players aren't now. Our players are top of the game. So again, then the academy directors in England are telling me your players are coming now fitter and faster than ever. So it gives them a head start. It gives them a chance. And we have a real strong welfare team around that to make sure that the boys are okay, that they're still doing their education. We've linked up recently with Campbell College in Belfast.
Yep.
It's a great school. It's a great partner. We're based up there, our accommodations up there, our food's up there, our gym program's up there. 15 of the 24 boys attend Campbell College so that we can honestly say that they can concentrate on their education without having to neglect their football and vice versa. And the players that don't go to Campbell College, we then get them over to their schools in the morning time, pick them up in the afternoon, back to the Campbell where they'll do their footballing program. So we just try and invest in the players, replicate life as a professional footballer as much as we can, and still allow them to be 14, 15-year-old boys. And then further afield from that, whenever they do go into England, we feel Northern Ireland's unique selling point of being a small nation is that we can be very personal with our players and we can try and look after them from a real, holistic development, not just on the pitch, off the pitch. And we do that with a team, and I can honestly say from Michael O'Neill right down, we're all very aligned. I think the beauty of our program is Michael will know most under 14 players.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any other nation that can do that, or would have our senior managers so invested in our young players. And we feel we have to be, because we are 1.9 million population. Off that 1.9 million population, we have 3 major sports in this country. And we have probably no full-time professional game yet. We don't have a professional workforce yet in our domestic league. So we do feel like we're 2-0, 3-0 down, when we're trying to compete. And look, it is an unfair, uneven field when we try and compete against the other bigger nations, but we feel what we can do is we can really get the terms and get personal with our players and offer them that real strong coach-athlete relationship.
How long has this programme been looking for?
2013, Jim Magilton was the person who came in, and that was his concept, that felt that we needed something to support the clubs, to support the players within their clubs. Because I think the clubs were offering, who've done a fantastic amount of work, who ID the players in the first place, give them a place to go. But we're getting two sessions a week, and I think Jim had felt for this to be right, for our players to get a chance, we need support as a national governing body. And then 2019, we had the residential aspect, which first happened up in Jordanstown, and it was backed by UEFA because we felt we needed that residential aspect. So, there's been great people throughout the years. It hasn't just been one person. There's been a strong team of people, past and present, who've been very committed to try and helping the next generation of players achieve their potential. And look, I'm just delighted that myself and Chris and the wider team at this minute in time can play our part in this journey.
It's one of the things that I've kind of, I wouldn't say focused on, but taken a real knowledge of over the last couple of years, because it should be highlighted. I feel like Northern Ireland are doing quite a good thing in terms of getting publicity around it. I think that the idea of it is phenomenal for kids to be able to develop. When you look at, I'm quite into the NFL now and stuff in America, and you compare programs and coaching programs, and you look at these 18-year-old kids that are playing sport in America compared to here, and you're sitting going like, we're so far off. But to have a program like this run that statistically works, and it's been shown to statistically work over the last couple of years, for anyone who watches social media or looks at these programs online, and you see the sheets that come out, the team sheets and stuff for different age groups, and just a highlight here, it's the little JD at the bottom or the side of their names that shows the progress of where they started and ultimately where they've got to. So I think we spoke before this that Northern Ireland recently have been qualifying for more tournaments, beating bigger nations, and it seems to become quite common now.
Yeah, look, we're very proud of the contribution that we're making. Like we don't want to sound like we're doing this alone. We aren't. We're supporting our clubs. At the end of the day, we're all in the same team. We all wanted a strong domestic league, which we're all aspiring to have, and then we want a strong national team with the best players. I think if, whatever role we can play, we will try and play. The program runs to give additional contact time and tries to supplement our most high potential players on their journey. But if you even look at the Isaac Prices, the Shea Charleses, Pierce Charleses, etc., like, even though they weren't born in Northern Ireland, they're Northern Irish. They have a bloodline to Northern Ireland, and they've been playing in our youth teams, really, really early, in like 16s, 17s,
Shea was
teens,
playing up front with
19s.
me at the 19s, and he's obviously went on to become a superstar. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah, so like we try and pride ourselves that, as I think is a strong value from Northern Ireland in general, Northern Ireland people, is that humility, is that connection. So that's the wider objective, is to get people all proud to play for us, and us to try and support them. But look, it's been a nice year. So like, remember, like, I think maybe this time last year, maybe a year previously, we had a bad result against Kazakhstan, and there was quite a lot of scrutiny. But I think we're very comfortable with the players coming through. I think our underage teams have done really well, but we're really clear that even though there's trophies can be tangible, and we're really clear that our senior teams need to qualify, but our role is as in the academy, and our role in the youth international teams is to get players into the next level, is to try and develop them, is to try and impact them, to hopefully one day play. So results become secondary. Doesn't mean to say that we don't want to win, but we have a real strong coaching staff that are clear that we are second fiddle, and we have to try and develop these players to get them to the next stage.
I enjoy it. I thoroughly enjoy having these conversations around different aspects of football. So having you on's been a delight.
Well, what struck me too, I had a good conversation, and again, I hope he doesn't mind me name checking Mark Montgomery. He's a Ulster University researcher at the minute. He's looking into the Northern Ireland athlete in the Commonwealth Games, and what we do try and say is that, like, if you look at Rory McIlroy, from Northern Ireland, world number one, Carl Frampton, Nick Joey Dunlop, I think Commonwealth Games are, I think, per capita, I think Northern Ireland sits high in terms of population of medals. So I think we do have a lot of talent.
Yeah.
I think we are
a talented.
Yeah. We're a small nation, but we do punch above our weight, and we want to try and do that in football.
One thing I want to bring you back to is, you've touched on it here throughout the podcast, and it's just something that I admire from you. Obviously, you've done a lot, as we've touched on here, and a lot of people have got to really understand who Andy is. But you touched on the word pundit, and it's one thing that I love at the minute, and I've got to listen to you do games and shows, and I love the detail that you go into when I'm able to watch those live games. But the Irish League has obviously scaled massively in the last 2-3 years, with players coming in, money being thrown around, and obviously it's benefited the league to and fro. It's making it more competitive, but I want to start getting into the idea of being able to have conversations with the guests like yourself about the weekends and the weekend just passed, and this weekend past has probably had a lot of controversy, especially at Linfield. And obviously you've seen it, you've heard about it. What do you think about it? I know referees get a tough time, but
You've put me in an uncomfortable situation. I could be sacked tomorrow morning because it's.
I apologise. We'll bleep it out if it is too bad.
Yeah,
We're not
like
on to do this job.
it looked like it wasn't a goal, didn't it?
The best thing about it was Matthew Fitzpatrick kind of turned around being like, it was in, because that's exactly what I would have done, but I would have been sprinting away with Shearer with that finger.
So would I.
I can't believe him just walking. I was like, what's he doing? Like, run.
I would have been sprinting away as well. Look at it from. I had the privilege of watching from the BBC highlights. It didn't look into me. Didn't. What I will say is I'm on putting record is at the referee I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it. That's for me the hardest job. The amount of scrutiny, and you might say I'm sitting on the fence here, but
no, I
genuinely have a newfound passion for a referee to game recently. Well, when I say recently, it was about a year ago in a schools match, and I was
never again.
I doubted myself on every occasion. Even when I gave a decision, somebody said, that's the wrong decision. I think, was that the wrong decision? So
it's being headstrong too, and I get that referees have a very tough job on their hands, and I've abused them multiple times, and I had Andrew Davey on, I've had Desi on, I've had conversations around it. I think it's one of the toughest things to do at the minute. But ultimately, I think the referees went with is official there. I think, like, from the looks of the highlights and stuff, I think the conversation's been had, like, I haven't seen it.
They've got it wrong. There's no crime in it. Like, we're all coaches, players, referees. We're all on a mission to get better.
100%.
And I'm sure when they're reflecting that, they'll think, like, we got that one wrong. That didn't cross the line. It was a mistake, and they just have to try and put something in place to rectify that mistake or for it happening again. But yeah, quite. Did Fitzy not? Did he not celebrate?
Walked so casually. I was like, why are you walking? I had a top off around the way,
and he's sliding on the south stand.
No, I'm like, the other side of it is I want to talk about Coleraine. Big result against Crusaders, 4-0. Joel Cooper obviously with a big summer signing. It's clicking for Coleraine.
Yeah, they look good, don't they? I think I've played with Joel Cooper. He's on his day. He's devastating. He is absolutely devastating. Coleraine seem to have built a real top team, real balanced team.
Very balanced, yeah.
And Furnace Crusaders, I think they're a little bit of a transition. I think Decky's went with quite a lot of young players. Maybe it's subjective. Difficult time there.
Definitely financially as well, from conversations that have been had.
As a player, I've been there with a sort of transition team, so. But I think he's handled himself very well. His interviews, you can tell he's been quite impressive, but he's always stayed, control, balance, which I really respect from Decky. He hasn't at any stage, threw anybody under the bus, and I think he realises that he's got young players there. So, but big result for Coleraine. It was a bit of a statement, wasn't it?
Big statement. I think it just seems like they can do both sides of it. I know, like, you look at teams, and some people say that their team's built on playing out or whatever, but Coleraine have kind of built themselves into like a
hard pace.
They can just do it all, and they've got physical players who have pace, and
I think they're craving success. They have a real good fan base, very good fan base. Coleraine was a great place to go and play, real passionate fan base, and as a regional club outside Belfast, I think they're probably wanting to be that next team outside Belfast to win the Gibson.
The other side of it is they're still unbeaten, but so's Glentoran, who I think look quite solid as well. I was thinking of Ballymena and the signings of Ballymena and how it was left last year, and people coming through the doors. They started the season very well, but one of their first main chances with the top 4 opposition, but Glentoran looked very comfortable.
Yeah, I haven't seen Ballymena this year. I've seen Glentoran. I've seen them against Bangor at the Oval, and even though I think was it 1-0,
they were just not.
Glentoran were impressive. I felt they were impressive. Probably could have played forward more in midfield, but I felt like there was a couple of players that I was impressed with.
I think Hoban's going to be. I wasn't going to say I was sitting on the fence at the time when he signed, but physical player, goal scorer, playing in the League of Ireland. I was sitting going, I don't really know. Hasn't fully hit it, but
yeah. And maybe that's what
force of a fella, isn't he?
Think of a little bit of depth now. I thought that they had a very mature performance. played the back three that day, and Amos was good. Yeah, very good players. Cole was good. Jordan Stewart looked lively. I knew he was going to be
got so much technical.
Yeah,
too, doesn't he?
good. And they've good midfield players, have good experience now. So Glentoran impressed me. And I think they probably went under the radar too, because of the emergence of Coleraine and the fact that what Coleraine has signed. And then the Decky and Paddy are great. Decky's, I think Paddy's a little bit more methodical, behind the scenes, but knows the game. And Decky's he's a great leader. He'd be great to play for.
Yeah,
I think he keeps the team honest. You can tell the players they're focused. So I think Glens will be quietly confident. I think they've brought a lot to the league this year. I think they were good last year, strong last year with probably a poor finish. So they'll be looking to try and just tidy that up towards the end.
Take that next step, sort of thing.
Decky won't appreciate us heaping a little more pressure on him.
No,
right?
he probably wants to stay. I was going to say to you, sometimes you'd like to stay under the radar, wouldn't you?
I think if you're Glentoran and you're doing well, you can't be on the radar. Given the size of the club, I think you have to just accept and live in the moment and enjoy the fact that there's a strong Glentoran coming again.
Especially for the first time in probably a long time. Dungannon, on the other hand, massive finish last year, win the Irish Cup, getting to Europe, but just haven't hit a stride, have they?
I haven't, no, but is it a case of because of what they achieved last year and they've lost a couple of big players and then a couple of suspensions? Is it a case of just taking time to find their groove again? I mean, they won the Irish Cup, strong finish, then won the Charity Shield.
Mm-hmm.
So probably on and up, and lost McGovern, not very hard to replace, but maybe just need to find their groove again. I think they've got a top manager, tried and tested. They've good players. I love Bagheera Mana, Alves.
They're all technically super
good to watch. A nice blend of youth coming through. I think they've found their niche. So I think I watched them last year and they were brilliant. Probably was the best team I watched last year.
Yeah.
Remember Linfield beat them at Windsor, and I think it was like 3-1 or something like that. I think they were brilliant that day.
Yeah, I think it's one of the things too, and I don't like to probably go too deep into the technical side of things, but when you talk about rotations and how players are supposed to drop off and receive balls and stuff, Rodney has them drilled to an absolute T.
Yeah, I think when you speak to Dungannon players, I think Rodney invests in them individually, the players. So I think they feel loved. I think I've never played under Rodney, so I could be talking, maybe out of school, but players who play for Rodney speak very highly of him, which is it's a nice, probably the ultimate thing a coach would want.
Yeah. Paddy Mack, on the other hand, had a bit of a tough start. I thought very lively in the transfer window. A couple of players were left out, big names. Belsing obviously be back in now, but hasn't really went with the young players as such, and it hasn't really worked out.
Yeah, I'll be unfair to comment on Glenavon. I haven't watched Glenavon this year. Haven't been at the games. Probably a transition again. Teams
seems like there's a lot of new young talent coming through. Do you know what I mean? He's sending even a lot of loan players from Lauren. You read that Josh Key, good player.
Paddy wants to play, doesn't he? He wants to. He'll play through the pitch. So he's an energetic coach. Great lad. Like Paddy, he'll get that right. They're early days yet.
It's just one of the things where
UFC just seems a little bit different from last year. So probably there's new players coming in, new instructions that to get on board with.
That's not a thing that can be built overnight. Do you know what I mean? It's one of these things we've all seen what Paddy can do. I think is more a thing like with Cliftonville and how they developed themselves over the last couple of years before he left. They can be a force. So.
And when you speak to Paddy, he's very clear on what he wants. So I think he maybe knows what's missing at the minute. And
as you say, sometimes you just need a bit of time.
Yeah.
The other side of it too is Lauren got a good result against Bangor last of all, but it seemed like it's taken them a while. I think they haven't really hit their stride yet.
Well, first, I think Bangor have been great for the league. They've been really refreshing. I think Lee Feeney's been brilliant.
I loved watching them last year.
I love his energy in the touchline. I love his honesty. He's decent attire too he's the best dressed manager. And he's just what a player. I'm sure he's good to watch. thought his team that day against the Oval, like Glentoran, were really good, but they're really organised and all playing for him.
It was just one mistake too, wasn't it?
Yeah. Then you look at Lauren against Cliftonville. Like, covered the game. Lauren were good. Lauren impressed me. In possession, out of possession. You could clearly, from a coaching perspective, how they tried to play.
And they've also
Centre forward was brilliant that night.
Is that the young O'Connor?
Really like him. He was brilliant that night. And then Lauren, the usual suspects, the Cosgroves had been there, done that, and Randall's just players who can handle the ball, and I think they could mix it and play. Same as Cliftonville. I thought Cliftonville were really impressive, and that time there, Cliftonville had a couple of bad results. But again, good team, good side. Teams that I very much like to watch.
Last question. Who do you think will win the league?
Linfield.
Honest?
Yeah.
You're a bit out here, folks.
Nah, it's not a bit of doubt. I want to be respectful to the challenging pack.
You think
You're probably going to think Linfield blinkers. I looked at Offord and Fitzpatrick.
I think Offord's the signing of the summer. I think, from being honest, he's an absolute animal, the young lad. He's stocky, he's quick, went to the ball, knows how to move people, knows how to use his body.
When I watched Linfield and I seen Offord and Fitzpatrick up front, I think they'll be hard to stop.
I agree.
I think that they're a good yin and yang. The amount of work that Fitzpatrick does and bringing players into the game. I think Linfield have, probably brought a bit of energy into their team. Now they've lost Matty Orr, as you say, and lost Joel Cooper, which is a big blow. But
I mean, it's just a tactical switch, isn't it? You don't always have to go the same way with things, but one player in Joel Cooper, I don't think is massive. Wouldn't say it's a massive loss. It is. Joel's probably one of the best players in the league, but when you look at the way Linfield have switched up what they're doing, it seems to be quite strong. They played in Europe, played against Shelburne, could have got a result regardless of the.
Yeah, they were brilliant down there. I think a bit disappointing at home, but
which that sent off as well. Very questionable, especially in such a high-profile game.
I just think it'll be too much. Not that it'll be too much for other teams. I think they'll get it tight at times, but I think they've enough know-how
and experience, and
then they've got that quality. And I think with, as I say, Offord, Fitzpatrick, it's be hard to handle.
So Linfield?
I think Linfield will win the league.
There. I'm looking forward to the end of the season.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this year myself, because even though I'm saying Linfield, I don't think it's as clear as cut as I would have said maybe last year.
Oh, absolutely not.
I think there's a chasing pack now, and
it just makes it more exciting.
It does.
Well, listen, thank you. I've thoroughly enjoyed such a detailed conversation with you. It's probably the first time we've probably had a conversation like that. And I love thinking about all that, being methodical and how you're doing your processes. I think everything that you're doing at the minute's an absolute credit, especially the young kids in the development. So, very proud.
Well, likewise, I appreciate the invite to come on. I feel privileged. I feel I can't outdo Sean Ward with his multicoloured polo.
Like you could have tried, but I like that you've just turned up, just being you.
Went safe. Yeah, no, I think Sean's personality with the the purple and the orange was a Ralph Lauren polos.
It looked a wee bit like a American rugby player or something. Do you know?
Too hard to top that. So
all good. Well, listen, thank you so much. We do hugs just to end it off.
Yeah, brilliant.
So thank you so much. Absolute
pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it, Paul. Join us next week on the On the Spot Football Podcast for yet another fantastic guest. This guy is single-handedly more famous than me on TikTok. He's an Irish League manager. He runs around the streets with a big red bag. Postman Pat. See you soon.